All right, so what's going on? This is episode 2, approximately 2 weeks after we did our first episode. A little late, didn't even come in right after the deadline, but didn't quite matter. So I guess the first point, as what I was just saying, didn't even matter for the Bulls at the deadline because they just stayed put and did absolutely nothing. Which, I mean, I guess that's one direction. I guess they chose the
Yeah.
direction of just not doing anything. So that's that's it's pretty much, there's not much to talk about for the deadline.
Yeah, my opinion on the deadline is, the first episode I mentioned how I wanted them to choose a direction, right? Like either just sell the team, or sell the players, I guess, and
Some team
go into
too.
a full, well, yeah, and go into a full rebuild, or go all in, right? Like you're kind of already in a spot where your future is kind of in a weird spot, so you have, I guess, the leniency to go all in if you really want to, if you think that's the direction that you should go. But it just was very odd to me that they went and did nothing. Like it just made very little sense to me and really the entire fan base. You know, if you go on Bulls Twitter, they were very upset that the Bulls made no moves, and then AK went on his little post trade deadline interview in front of the media and basically said like he's happy with the group and so on and so forth. And they go to lose what, six straight.
Yeah.
So
Everyone is a single
um,
game.
so it's very odd decision making from the staff. And I would not be surprised if that decision making is not even made by the front office. It's more so made by the owners.
Yeah, but
Um, so
yeah,
I don't know, man. It's frustrating to say the least, but we do at least have some news
yeah. We got a little bit of
that
news.
came our way that is a little promising. So we'll see. We have some more bad news, unfortunately.
Okay, so today we got some very very shitty news, which I think was coming sooner than later, and we are getting awfully close to the playoffs. So Lonzo Ball is done for the year, and that's a huge hit to this team, huge hit to just pretty much just the whole landscape of how the rest of the season could go. And
Yeah.
no Lonzo just sucks. I don't know if you got anything else besides just sucks.
Yeah, I mean, as I said in episode one as well, like Lonzo's the glue to this team. Um, Obviously, a very small sample size. It was what, 40 games ish with him, if
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but it was the
Um,
best 40 games of Bulls basketball in the last 12 years.
exactly. So the sample size is small, but he was the glue that kept the team together. And although this was pretty expected, it just really sucks. Like it really does just suck
Yep.
for the fan base, for him, really, especially. I mean, I feel so bad. Obviously, he's making millions and millions of dollars, so like it kind of is like, how can you feel bad for a guy making that much money? And it's more than that. It's
Yeah, of
that's
course.
got to be very mentally taxing, to pretty much have your career ripped away from you.
Yep.
And nobody even knows if he'll ever play again. So
Yeah. If he'll ever play again, if he ever plays in Chicago again, who knows?
exactly,
Who knows?
and he seems to really like it here, which also sucks. Like he may have never even played his last game in Chicago, and he didn't even have a choice in that. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
so
So the Bulls went out, I guess, before that news broke, but I mean, as everybody pretty much knew, but as they
yeah,
probably
they
knew,
knew this was coming.
yeah. So the Bulls went out yesterday and they signed Patrick Beverly, which I love because even if he doesn't even play good solid minutes, he's gonna be, or at least he'll be good defensively at the very least. He'll be intense, and when the Bulls team just looks like they don't give a shit, which is 90% of the time, Patrick Beverly's not that kind of guy that you're gonna get.
Yeah,
You're not gonna get half-ass play out of him.
yeah,
And
yeah. I love it. Kind of to add on what you're saying, like he's just kind of one of those guys that, again, I keep referencing episode one, but it's just the truth. Where I said, this team just needs people that care, right? And Pat Bev is kind of one of the staples in the league of people that care and you know give a crap about their job. It seems like so.
yeah,
That's definitely a positive. And one kind of underlying positive is that we kept Goran Dragic, and I think that's huge.
yep,
Just for, obviously he's been kind of like the last 2 months or maybe even longer than that. But I think just for a veteran presence, I think he's huge. I think him and Andre obviously play well together, and then I think he just gets along with the team. So I think he's good to have around, and as a guy that can come in and give you like even 5 minutes a game, just something small like in little spurts. Come playoff time, I do think he won't play a lot if they do make the playoffs, but I do think again he's pretty valuable. So I'm very glad they kept him and didn't keep Tony Bradley. I will say that.
Yeah. And I mean, he's valuable almost in the same way that Pat is. Locker room guy, locker room presence for our young guards, and I mean, Pat might be a little more physical on the floor. He might show up a little bit more on the floor, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
to the eye test. But in the locker room, keeping a guy like Goran is definitely exactly. A plus. So I guess moving on from Pat, the last 6 games, which I believe it is the last 6 games since the deadline, or never been 6 games. I believe so. But they've been doing nothing but losing. 6-game slide. They're currently 2 games out of the play-in. Obviously, that needs to turn around, which I think Pat is a huge step in that direction. Just get some heads out of asses, and hopefully they start turning around after the break.
I mean, kind of diving into some stats here a little bit. Obviously, the Bulls are 7 games under 500, but they only have a 0.3 or a negative 0.3 point differential, which point differential doesn't really tell a lot of the story, but it shows that they are good enough to be in that play-in hunt, right?
Yeah.
They may not be like as good as the team should be, because they should be a playoff team.
Easily. Especially when you got 10 teams making at least the play-in.
Yeah. But they're at least good enough to be, 8 through 10. And I think that point differential stat does show that a little bit, because they're way ahead of like the Pacers. The Pacers are a negative 2.6 point differential.
Yep.
So guys like around them record wise, they're right on that stat or way ahead. So I will say that is promising. That when they do win, they manage to win by a decent margin.
Yeah.
So that kind of does make up for it as well. The losses adding up, it kind of offsets that. But I don't know. This team's just very confusing. Very, very confusing.
Yeah, and I think a guy like Pat will definitely tell the time of how this team can actually play. And with the upcoming next 3 games out of the break, very winnable games. I'm looking right now. Nets at home, Wizards at home, and then in Toronto. Those are again for this team. Every game's been winnable. They've beaten. Reference back to first video. I said it a million times. They play down to opponents, and they can beat anybody. So we could easily go on this run down the stretch here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Pat Bev's fit, just to kind of add on to him, I think obviously there was a lot of rumors about Russell Westbrook or potentially even John Wall. Yeah. I think there might have been a couple about Reggie Jackson. Yeah. I may have seen his name tied to the Bulls, but obviously not as seriously as those other names.
Right. John Wall would have been awesome.
Yeah, I like those guys. Obviously, I think Russ has been held back a lot in LA. Right. I think John Wall is just it's tough to get in a groove when you have people like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on your team and you haven't played basketball in a year and a half.
Right.
But with that said, I don't really think their fits would be much different on the Bulls team versus those teams that they were previously with. No. I think Russ would be in the same scenario of he doesn't have enough floor spacing. He doesn't have enough, just I guess space on the floor and like ability to operate, in his way. And I think the same thing with John Wall. There's just not enough floor spacing to make those guys' roles prominent on this team. So I think Pat Bev, although he's clearly the worst player, I think the fit is better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what
there's already the talent at guard in the locker room. So I think Pat's definitely more of the better fit to just play, less minutes and just give him tense minutes and tense time on the fucking bench. You know.
And to add on one last thing, he's obviously not the caliber of defender that Lonzo Ball is,
No.
but he is a good defender that can maybe help take some of that load off of AC, and Kobe White's been playing better defensively, so on and so forth. So that may just be something that the Bulls needed as well. It's just another perimeter defender that can just help a little bit, with some of that load that the better defenders on the team are, having to take in on a nightly basis. So we'll see.
All right. So pretty much wrapping up. DeMar in the All-Star game, which isn't really, I could really give a shit about the All-Star game. The All-Star game's,
I didn't watch the All-Star game.
And neither did I. It's an absolute joke. I don't even know why I wrote down DeMar's stats here. 8 points, 5 assists, and 6 rebounds. Who gives a shit?
All around game.
Yeah. Yeah, all around game. All right. I had to take a quick pause of Rooney there for a second. But I don't even remember what you were saying.
Yeah, well, I was just saying, like, the Bulls have talent. They're definitely good enough to make a playoff push. Obviously, with the games left, it's going to be very difficult to actually get into one of those top 6 spots if they could do it at all.
Yeah.
But I do think if they can make the play-in game, their talent is just too good to not make a playoff spot. Now, once they make it to the playoffs, whether it being the 7th or 8th seed,
we'll see.
I highly doubt they make it past the first round.
No. Which we'll talk more about that down the stretch.
Yeah, so it's definitely a weird spot to be a Bulls fan for sure right now, but I do think with Pat Bev coming in, there's some promise. We'll see. Hopefully we get some news down the line about Lonzo Ball potentially coming back next year. That would, even if the Bulls miss the playoffs this year and don't even get their own pick, I think if Bulls fans heard Lonzo Ball was going to be back next year, they'd be okay with it.
We'll be buzzing if Lonzo's back next year.
So that's kind of the one thing we're waiting on to help save the franchise right now is Lonzo Ball, which sucks, but it's just the truth.
Yeah.
So that's all.
All right, that's it for episode 2 of No Bowl. Nothing but sad news, pretty much. Nothing but dismay. But all right, well, that's
the life of a Bulls fan.
Yeah, the life of a Chicago Bulls fan. Nothing but misery. All right, well, I guess that's it. See ya.